Aunt Garrett is ready to trial, and so am I. Arguably, I am ready. Even though I don't remember where we left off. I started the stream without even thinking to go to my dashboard and think of a new title, but thinking of a title always takes so long. We'll just keep the same one as before. Don't tell anyone. Oh, that's right. We had found Judge Jigoku basically admitted, yes, I did kill what's his name? I did kill him, and I did bring him to the thing. And I did it because I had orders to from a secret conspirator here in Britain. And we were just about to be found not guilty, and Kazuma jumped in and said, look, you're gonna, Your guy is still guilty because he is the Reaper, and he is the mastermind who ordered Judge Jigoku to go do it. So, like, this trial isn't over yet. 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain, whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that, without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the Shanghai from France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword Karuma before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. He sensed my killing intent at once. My... Kisatsu? My something. My killing intent. Right. I see. You're that Asugi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? What are you going to do? Stab me? Man who was stabbed. That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth. That's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak! I'm not saying another word. Not until you give me some fish and chips. Even if your life depends on it? That's right. Even then. Shing! So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer, Gregson, and the lead coroner, Wilson, must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. Or woman. You don't know. Well, he thinks he knows. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barak Van Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. And as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Ah. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barak Van Zeeks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asugi.
What?
What you've just told the court, are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago?
I hearsayed it with my own ears, say. His shameful admission.
In that case, I know the name of the Reaper.
What? Lord Van Zeeks?
I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one! One possibility!
If Lord Van Zeeks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is, too. You? I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is my great-great-grandson, Phoenix Wright. They didn't put him here, though. Oh no! Why isn't Phoenix Wright here? He's the true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey, I'm sure of it. I know who it is, too, but you say it first.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassination, or the assassin exchange, and manipulated the autopsy results, is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks, had been killed. I was wondering if there was any proof for that. If there was, I've forgotten it, because it was just like, well, freaking obviously. Obviously it's him. Obviously it was him from the start. From the moment we stepped off the boat. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zeeks?
10 years ago, I was very new to my profession. But I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lord to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you.
Alright, well, he can now excuse himself. We can get the old judge back in here, and prosecute him normally, in a normal court trial. I'm sure that's what will happen.
I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now. I was very much mistaken.
It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. I guess I hadn't considered that he was the Reaper. I figured he was the Professor, which he obviously is, and we'll unmask him there as well. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey.
The court awaits your Hadoukens, my lord.
You are still holding all the Hadoukens, all 6 of them. He could simultaneously KO a sextuple KO right now.
This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense.
It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal. Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claimed there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zeeks' autopsy. That is utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Greg's own lips. That's hearsay. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson is dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say that ghosts exist? I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Arg! Oh well. Well, that's all she wrote then. Order in the court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder, and in the light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there is really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there?
So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange.
Oh, it's a good thing he didn't turn it around, or else he would be hitting his own hand with a golden unicorn horn, or brass. Or copper. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections. Kazuma. He's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? Well, now that I have the jetpack... If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zeeks' autopsy. I guess there's someone. I forget who. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks, even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Sith won't say anything. Oh, that's who I was gonna pick, so that's a problem. Oh, is it her daughter, though? There's still one ray of hope. Actually, there is one person one person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There is no one left. Who, Ryunosuke? Who? Tell me! Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks is Maria Gori.
Take that!
Denied. What? I want to know why. And I want to know why you're proposing to call such a witness with that look of utter desperation on your face. In other words, you are wide of the mark, Ryunosuke. Very wide. Oh, thanks. Don't spare my feelings or anything. Alright. Given the contemptible allegations you're making, counsel, I won't be letting that blunder pass unpunished. Oog! He's like, I now declare myself not guilty. It's clear to me that any further discussion of this case will be fruitless. It is, of course, as usual, extremely hilarious that we had, like, he was already found not guilty, and now, like, because the trial's been interrupted, he's like, in accordance with the findings in this court, 6 Hadoukens in the face, in the jail. And that they would just accept, you know, would just accept, like, he could do that right now. I don't even need to be at 0 hit points. He could just be like, bang, I've heard enough. So who is it then? They were kind enough to say, like, it can't be Dr. Sith. And he's like, Dr. Wilson is dead. Gregson is dead. Who is this? Oh, the governor of the prison. He wasn't there. Who was there if it wasn't her? I thought they were going to be like, don't you remember you were 9 years old, but they let you in the autopsy room because you're an autopsy genius. Is it gonna be her husband? Was he...
Take that!
Was he involved? No. There was somebody else present at the autopsy. Surely you haven't forgotten. No, no. I'll get it right this time. Or was it him? He was the governor of the prison. He was the... I really thought he was there. Exactly, yeah. Liar, liar. I do feel a little sick. He wasn't there. Who was at the autopsy? Or did he say he said he was supposed to be there? But then he like didn't show. He was like, "Oh, they said don't go in the room. Just wait out here." Or he showed up and the coffin was already nailed shut. But he said was there? No, I don't. Maybe it is him.
Take that!
No. It's unfortunate because this is like something that I guess I've always asked for is, you know, a slightly harder Phoenix Wright game, and this one I would know if I had been paying more attention. If you pick someone who's dead, probably not. I don't think. Was he?
Take that!
Oh, wait, that's right. He was the assistant who signed his name. He knows somebody?
Take that!
Yes. Yes, okay. He was... John Wilson was the real autopser, and he was the assistant, and so he did the autopsy, but then John Wilson just signed off on it or something. Why did Iris think that this was her father? Oh, because Sherlock Holmes said, like, the guy who did the autopsy is your father. And she was like, oh, that must be John Wilson. And then later was like, no, it was actually him. And he's like, actually, I lied. You don't have a father. Heaven help us. Another Japanese. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Eugene Mikotoba. 16 years ago, he came to London with Seishiro Jigoku and Genshin Asugi as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. He just forgot and submitted 8 incorrect guesses before getting to it. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Also, shouldn't he have, like, knowing that all of this was, like, not on the up and up, shouldn't he have, like, come right out and told us this, like, a long time ago? Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No. Of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asugi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So, present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asugi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities.
Objection!
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. So, you admit it? Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. Arg! This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi. Grrr. Ooh, warg! That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Mr. Sholmes! This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection!
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mael Strongheart, it is imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely, it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture, let us have a vote by means of applause. After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along with the prevarications of your superiors? Order in the court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices, a door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you, and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence. He's right, the judge has absolute authority. Yes, he calls the trial to What? The trial's gonna go on, how about now? It's a closed court, but unspecified members of the judiciary are present. And sworn to secrecy, I guess. They all signed an NDA. Well, you should just present you the whole truth here. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of
A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery.
This is how court works.
Well, my lord, you hear the voice of British justice, I take it. I think you will find it will be rather awkward to silence.
Of course, the fact that it's a closed trial, or closed court, should absolutely mean that Sholmes could not make his way in and just start riling up the crowd like a cheerleader. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courtroom, we shall reconvene.
A recess won't be necessary, my lord.
Pardon?
Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact.
What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you... Actually, how did you even know, like, what point we were at in the trial? To be like, to burst in and go, hey, I get it. You are being exposed as the Reaper, and you're trying to say that Mikotoba shouldn't be able to testify, but I have him here. It's like, how do you know any of this? When he bursts in and is like, no, we're already done, actually. Or we're still at the... we still have Jigoku on the stand. You didn't know this would happen, did you? What is that? Is that the script? Did you read the script?
My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely.
Is it going to be that he's been listening to the trial the whole time through the magic satellite walkie-talkie? I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once.
But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes?
I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you.
Absolutely. It's still in my pocket.
She sends her regards and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please.
Of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Also, just in case. Another save. Why not? Oh, hey, look! It's the person that I said to summon. The very first one. So, witness, please state your name and occupation for the court.
Yuji Mikotoba, lecturer in forensic medicine at Imperial Yume University in Tokyo, Japan.
And, Professor Mikotoba, the young lady beside you is?
This is Dr. Maria Gori, Scotland Yard's practicing coroner, the daughter of Dr. Sith, I understand.
Yes, Dr. Sith.
I'm afraid I can't tell you why she's here. She just appeared.
You summon this strange Japanese man as a witness to that autopsy. But you don't summon Mama, right? It makes no sense. She's right. She is right. He10 was right all along. Hashtag He10 was right all along. She was there too.
That's about the size of it. I've had her eyes boring into the side of my cheek constantly, while I was in the antechamber too.
Poor man, the idea of it's making me shudder. The revelations about Dr. Sith that came to light some days ago defiled the reputation of the entire judiciary. She was therefore deemed unfit to appear as a witness in today's proceedings. The Ministry of Justice's decision on that is final.
Well, we wouldn't want any more perjury to be committed, would we?
The Ministry of Justice? Some questionable strings are being pulled, I think. I remember you, Dr. Mikotoba, but I certainly never expected to be meeting you under these circumstances.
Yes, it's been a long while, Lord Strongheart.
The prosecution understands that you were a visiting student of forensic science in London until 10 years ago.
That's right.
I studied under Dr. Wilson at St. Sinners.
So you were present at the autopsy of my brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks.
I was, yes. I assisted Dr. Wilson with the entire procedure. Mama is far more skilled than any Japanese man.
Well, Dr. Wilson asked me to be his primary assistant on that occasion.
And this autopsy report was actually penned by you, I believe.
Yes.
I noted all of the doctor's findings, and when we were done, he read through the document and signed it. Poor Mama. As a secondary assistant, she wouldn't have had such a good view of all the innards. So, Professor, do you remember Inspector Gregson?
Yes, of course.
If it wasn't for his insistence, Lord Van Zeeks' autopsy would never have happened. He was absolutely convinced that it would reveal decisive evidence against Genshin, you see. So Lord Strongheart had to entreat the nobility to allow it to take place. Do correct me if I'm wrong, my lord. It was as a result of that autopsy that a mass murderer was apprehended and justice was done. But Gregson admitted it before he was killed. He admitted that the results of the results of the autopsy were fabricated. You were there at the time, so you must testify. You have an obligation to tell the truth about what really went on.
Absolutely. That's precisely why I'm here.
And that's why I am here too. Very well then, you will give your formal testimony now, witness. But before you begin, a word of warning.
Oh?
You will state truthfully and accurately what you saw and what you heard at the time.
I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, my lord.
The moment your testimony verges on supposition, I will expel you from my courtroom. Remember that. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Alright, well, I guess that ruins my entire argument. Thanks, Dad. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange. Oh, there's supposition right there. You're in trouble. There were no other signs of internal injury. Nothing questionable at all. It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach.
Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant.
Okay, so what was the evidence? Have I read this autopsy? Death from a single stab wound to the heart. No, hang on. Yeah, this is Clint's autopsy. Okay. Death from a single stab wound to the heart. Other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no document in corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. It doesn't say what the evidence is. No indication, nothing to suggest fabrication. Professor Mikotoba, are you certain about that?
Well, nothing that I could positively identify as such, much less swear to in testimony.
Arg! Well, that clears things up nicely. The only fabrication here, Asugi, has come from you. What? You claim the inspector confessed just before his death, but that is the fabrication. No! He freely acknowledged it. I swear he did. I heard him say it. It's like hearsay. Freely? With the tip of a sword at his throat? The man was clearly at his wit's end. The court will give no credence to this confession that was uttered in obvious hearsay. I love like they're not afraid to drop the word perjury left and right. Like perjury, perjury, perjury. Never tell perjury on the stand. Hearsay, totally fine, absolutely fine. Maybe it is fine in Japanese court, although we're not actually in Japanese court today. Quite simply, there was nothing questionable about the investigation of Lord Clint Van Zieks' death. And with this testimony we have, without question, uncovered the whole truth of the matter.
If I may, my lord, there was most certainly something questionable about it, and the whole truth does rather elude us, I feel.
I beg your pardon?
Well, you're obviously aware of the facts of the case. All 4 of the professor's previous victims died when an enormous beast was set upon them that ripped out their throats.
Such horrifying crimes.
But curiously, the killer's last victim, Lord Clint Van Zieks, suffered a different fate.
Yes, you're right. He was stabbed through the heart with a sword. That's enough. I believe I warned you about this, witness. I promised to curtail your testimony as soon as it entered the realms of supposition or speculation.
Oh.
Very well, my lord. In that case, the defense will pursue a conclusion to this during the cross-examination.
What?
I have the right to cross-examine every witness after testimony. And I fully intend to exercise that right.
Ryunosuke.
I'm afraid that even the presiding judge has no authority to contravene the letter of the law, as I'm sure every member of the judiciary present in the gallery would agree. If you would all kindly chant cross-examine, cross-examine, in order to signal your desires. Very well. You may begin, counsel. However, the moment your argument strays from the established facts, I will not hesitate to bring the cross-examination to a close, to an end. Proceed with caution. Yes, my lord. But, you weren't actually present at the autopsy yourself, were you, Dr. Gory? Does that matter? Well, I just wonder how useful your testimony can be in that case, really. I mean, it would be different if your mother, Dr. Sith, were in the stand, but... I've read all the paperwork about the case, and Mama's told me the story countless times. More hearsay. Nice. Nice. The statement I just made is exactly what's written in the autopsy report. I did confirm that myself at the time, it's true. Besides the stab wound, there were no other signs of internal trauma. I see. Mama told me all about it. Oh? She said there was nothing of note internally. But they did find an amazing piece of evidence, something unbelievable. Unbelievable? What do you mean? Come on, Dr. Gory, what was it? Beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence.
Hold it!
What exactly was it, though? What does beautiful but dangerous mean? It was fugu fish. Well, it was sparkly and round, with a hole, as if it might slip over a finger, perhaps. It was a ring, belonging to Genshin Asugi. My father's ring was inside the victim's stomach? At the time, Genshin wore a large ring on the digitus quartus of his left hand, the fourth, or ring finger. I'd understood it was some sort of keepsake. When my father left Japan for London 16 years ago, I was 8 years old, but I remember that ring. You do? My father's possessions were sent to our family home in Japan after his death, but the ring wasn't among them. Obviously not. It was a key piece of evidence. It remains under lock and key in the stores at Scotland Yard to this day. After the autopsy, Genshin was summoned by the police to check for the presence of his ring. It wasn't on his hand, of course. Moreover, there were deep abrasions on his finger where it had been pulled off. They arrested the man then and there, right before my eyes. How could they? I brought the ring along with me today. Oh, well, lock and key be damned, I guess. What? Here it is, a bit dusty from years in the stores. Good gracious, yes, that's it. I haven't seen that in 10 long years. What an ugly ring. And that was found inside the victim's stomach? Yes, I'm afraid so. You hesitated there, Professor Mikotoba. Should we read something into that? Well, it's just that thinking back now, I didn't actually witness the moment it was extracted from the victim's body. Oh my, really? At that precise moment, Dr. Wilson had asked me to fetch him a new scalpel, you see. Dr. Gory, the removal of historic evidence from the stores requires my consent, does it not? However it came to be here, the court cannot deny that this is crucial evidence for today's proceedings. Actually, because there's no chain of custody, they can deny. They can say, you just found that ring. She just pulled a ring out of her pocket and say, this is from the thing. You'll just have to trust me, even though I stole it instead of signing it out. Chain of custody. One of the many things not taken into account by Phoenix Wright and his games. Very well, you may submit it. The claws clasping the gem look terrible, and look sharp enough to cause a very nasty scratch. It's not the sort of ring normally seen in Japan. They almost look like claws protecting that jewel. We must examine it very carefully, Mr. Naruhodo, very carefully indeed. These fat claws are doing a good job of protecting the equally fat gemstone in the middle of this ring. Yes, if you were clumsy, you could give yourself a rather nasty cut on them, I should think. Ow! Now my fingers... Good, we're contaminating the evidence. Now they can't check it for DNA. The claws really are sharp. Oh my, that was very quick clumsiness, Mr. Naruhodo, even for you. Ugh. Who would make such a dangerous ring? You couldn't swallow it without doing yourself some fairly serious damage, surely, even though I'm not a doctor. A sticky mochi bun of that size would go down much better with some red bean paste in the middle. Don't do it! Don't do it, you'll choke to death. Happens to lots of people on New Year's Day in Japan, eating mochi. See? See? Someone as clumsy as me would probably manage to choke on it somehow. Choke on the mochi bun. But I didn't get anything from... Like, it didn't change the text. I guess it's just examine it for a hint that it's very no other signs of internal injury. Well, allow me to present this ring.
Objection!
The court has heard that the ring was extracted from the victim's stomach, but you didn't actually see it being removed, did you, Professor Mikotoba? That's right. As I said in my testimony before. At that moment, I was fetching a replacement scalpel that Dr. Wilson had requested. In other words, you can neither confirm nor deny whether this ring, in fact, really came from the victim's stomach or not. What are you suggesting, counsel? That the ring was never in the victim's stomach to begin with. It's entirely feasible that Dr. Wilson fabricated that detail about the autopsy. What are you saying? That Dr. Wilson? That Dr. Wilson was in possession of the ring in advance, after it was somehow stolen from Mr. Asogi. And he produced it during the procedure, pretending to have found it there and then in the victim's stomach.
Objection!
Supposition at best. What possible evidence do you have to support such a rash claim?
This evidence, right here. Oh, well, I guess I could have presented either one. That's the autopsy report. It is explicit in that report, counsel. Other than the ring, nothing unusual was noted internally, so I'm not sure how you intend to prove your point. You've already done it for me, my lord. The lack of internal injury says it all.
What?
To swallow a ring of this size would require considerable effort and determination. And in addition to its size, there are the sharp claws around the gemstone to contend with.
My brother was a determined man, and on the brink of death even more so, I'm sure. He would have stopped at nothing to ensure that evil killer was brought to justice.
But if he had really swallowed that enormous ring, it's inconceivable that no traces of its passage down his throat would have remained as internal trauma.
No!
And there you've arrived at the sticking point. That's precisely why I had my doubts about the findings myself 10 years ago. Then why didn't you say something at the time? I did. I still remember the conversation I had with Dr. Wilson in the laboratory that day. We haven't voiced him before. Oh no, maybe we did. Way back in case 1. What did he even look like? I don't know. Look at this! Oh, now this is a very curious thing to find in a man's stomach, wouldn't you say? But isn't that rather peculiar, Dr. Wilson? What's that now, Mikotoba? Well, if he swallowed a ring of that size with those sharp metal claws that it has, surely you'd expect to see damage to the throat and what? How do they swallow things in Britain with such a large O at the beginning of this word? Oesophagus? Weird spellings. The throat and oesophagus. Torn mucous membranes at the very least. Dr. Makotoba, may I remind you that I have vastly more experience than you. I'm terribly sorry. I can think of plenty of ways to explain why no injuries would be seen. What if he wrapped the ring in a piece of cheese? Well, no, I recognize the word esophagus, but I've never seen it spelled with an O in front. Like a lot of I feel like a lot of specifically medical terms have an O in them in British English that we tend to omit. And then pronounce it the same way. No, let's say this. The victim would appear to have ingested the item as evidence to identify his assailant. Go ahead, write it down. Write that down in your copybooks.